Hey, it's Sam, and as you see here, it says the best chart reading formula I have seen. Deploying SIC will 3 to 5x your understanding with almost no effort. So what does that mean? Well, the SIC, the big SIC, is the strategic improvement compounding. That's a bit of a mouthful, but what it means is that if you improve your understanding, maybe even just 10 to 15% understanding of maybe 15 different parameters, you can 3 to 5x your understanding of astrology with almost no effort. This is actually a business principle that has been known for a long time, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to do every little thing you're doing a little bit better, and then by the time you've done each one of those things a little bit better, it's exponential growth, which means when you do the first thing 10 to 15% better, that means there's already more growth in the second thing. Then you do that 10 to 15% better, and it just compounds. Now, what's very important in this whole equation as well is the big PS, which is the big priority and sequence. This is why it's so important. If you just want to start to improve things 10 to 15% and grow your understanding, but it's not connected to any system, then you're just randomly, let's say, improving your understanding of things, but it's not strategic. Strategic improvement compounding. It needs to be strategic. You need to improve the right things at the right time and deploy the right things at the right time. And that's what we're going to be doing today as we also expand and learn how to talk about the astrology signs and how to basically deploy this winning chart reading formula, which I said this is like the first entry point into reading the chart. And this type of template helps to organize your mind and your understanding around any real aspect of chart reading that you want to engage with. And today we're even going to be reading a couple charts here, case studies. In the last video, we used the chart of Will Smith to do an overview of how to look at some of his planets in signs. We're going to extend that today and bring in the houses. We're also going to do the chart of his wife, Jada Pinkett, and do that within the construct of this SIC, or this strategic improvement compounding idea. I know that's a mouthful, that's why I had to abbreviate it, but you'll see why I say strategic improvement compounding. It's literally how strategic improvements compound. If you improve your understanding, let's say, of the sun and the guna of the sun, the element of the sun, the modality of the sign, each one of these parameters, it starts to compound. And then with the houses and whatnot, then you're exponentially increasing and you're doing things in the right order. But that's where we need to start right now, because none of it means anything if you're not doing things in the right order. Priority and sequence, the big P and S that I talked about at the end of the last video. Because you not only need to know what to do, you need to know when to do it. Just like everything you've mastered in your life, there's a system to it, a formula that works. For example, sense this no sentence makes. You're saying, what? Well, of course, the words are out of order in this gibberish type of sentence. So with the words out of order, there's no sequence. The sequence is wrong. Of course, the sentence should be written as, this sentence makes no sense. But instead it says, sense this no sentence makes. Now you might say, oh, Sam, what does that have to do with anything? Well, guess what most of your questions sound like to me? Guess what most of the things you say to me about astrology sounds like? It sounds like this. And I'm not trying to be rude, but it does. Most of the time. And by the way, it doesn't have to be. The reason I spend time trying to let people know that you're it's just snacking and it's going nowhere. And people don't want to listen. They think I'm just being mean, or they think I'm just trying to get them in my course or something. You can join my courses or whatever or not. But the reason I say this stuff is because I'm bombarded with sentences that sound like this all the time. In fact, if it was just this, it wouldn't be that bad. Because at least this sentence has the right words in it. At least the words are all there. Many times the sentence would sound something like, since this no egg airplane flies to duck upside down world purple. So you can't even make any sense out of that. Because now it's not even just that the words are out of order. The words they're not even operating in the same universe. You can't even make a coherent sentence out of it. So I wind up having to listen to questions that are so out of left field. It's something like, so how is it that the purple of the duck means the upside down feather is the universe? Huh? Answer that. What? And it's not because you don't know what you're doing. It's because you have everything out of order. Nothing is in order. Nothing has a priority or a sequence. Nothing is sequenced properly. So you're making assumptions about things that you don't understand, and then you get the assumptions, way out of order. And then you start with an assumption that doesn't even belong there, and you begin a question from this thing that doesn't even belong, etc. So, like everything, in order to read a chart correctly, you need to apply the same principles, or your sentence will be like this. And in your mind, you know it. You know your mind is a jumbled, disorganized mess, don't you, when it comes to astrology? You should. You should realize you're probably much further away from being able to do this correctly than you give yourself credit for. And I mean, and I'm speaking just very bluntly, and I'm talking about the time that you're going to spend trying to figure this out relative to the time that you could spend to get trained correctly. It's the same amount of time, by the way. This is why in a previous video I had that chart of, digging the hole that gets right to the water, or just digging a bunch of little holes and thinking, this is so complicated. This is so complicated. It's actually not. That's why I started the video saying, if you just deepen your understanding of about 10 to 15 things, I can tell you what they are, you deepen your understanding of those things, and then you do them in the right order, it's really not that complicated. It is, but it's not. It's like everything else that you can learn. And this has been my mission for more than a decade, because I realize that astrology is not taught very well, not very systematic at all, mostly because students aren't used to it being taught systematically. They're used to just disorganized data that they have to try to make sense of. Again, you can keep doing that. Doesn't bother me if you want to keep doing that, but you should know that's what you're doing and know that there is another way. And know that this is plugged into a system that's called Sankhya philosophy, that is the same system that is behind yoga and Ayurveda. Jyotish is a more subtle application of that system, and applying that system in a strategic and prioritized and sequential view. That's how you read a chart. So we're going to do that here. So again, it's okay. You can, and that things are jumbled and out of order right now. You can start to apply that priority and sequence principle today. It's very simple, especially if you're just starting a regular chart reading. You start with the ascendant, with the rising sign. After you do that, after you have a rising sign, then the signs, each one of the signs also become houses. Like if you have a Leo rising sign, that's the ascendant, the rising sign, then Virgo is in the second house, and Capricorn is in the sixth house, and Aries is in the ninth house, right? Once you get the ascendant, then the signs also become houses. Also, the planets become house rulers, not just static indicators. So again, this is one of the big questions I have. I have Mercury in Capricorn. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know what the rising sign is first. I don't know what Mercury rules. So I don't know what house Capricorn is falling. And then a lot of questions would come, and then it's like, and I know it's Sati Sati, or it's Rahu is doing this, and I know this, and I know that. So how come this? I'm like, again, the whole thing's way out of order. So this is just a few different things, but you start with the ascendant. That's the main focal point around how your life works. Your main nature is through the ascendant, through the rising sign. It's not just one sign. It's that one place in relation to every other place. Taurus is the place where Gemini is the second house, and the ruler Mercury also rules the fifth house. So Taurus is the place where Mercury rules the second and fifth house. Jupiter rules the 8th and the 11th house. The Sun rules the 4th house. Mars rules the 7th and 12th house. That only happens from that one place. So again, the ascendant shows that bias, that way of seeing the world for every Taurus ascendant. That doesn't even take into account where any of the planets are. And in our case studies today, we have a Scorpio and a Taurus person. Will Smith is a Taurus, and his wife Jada Pinkett is a Scorpio, right? So, but the first thing is that we start with that ascendant. After that, again, as I said, the signs then become houses. This is an important structure. After that, and then the planets also become house rulers, not just static indicators. These specifics brings much more depth to your understanding just right away, both to your chart and the other charts that you'll be looking at. So, for example, here again, you could see this is that Taurus ascendant. That's his rising sign. This is Gemini second house, Virgo fifth house. So the fact that he has these planets here, it's not just, oh, Mars and Jupiter are in Leo. Okay, that means something. But it also is just as important that Mars is the 7th and 12th house ruler in Leo in the 4th house. Jupiter is the 8th and 11th house ruler in the 4th house, right? Mars and Jupiter are joined, which also means the 7th and 12th house ruler is joined the 8th and 11th house ruler in the 4th house. They also could do they could form what are called yogas, Raja yogas, other kinds of placements. I'm going to talk about that in the next video, more subtleties and also timing and things like that. But just this little bit of complexity, it just added a little bit more complexity, but it also added a lot. It's a little bit and a lot. It can be overwhelming if you don't take it incrementally. That's why you break it down into these frameworks. You see these frameworks right here, which we're going to talk about. That this formula here is king. So when you introduce that level, that almost three-dimensional level of specificity, then all of a sudden you're opening things up and it can get away from you. Well, what's more important, that it's in the plant, in the sign, or the house? Which is more important, that it's this or that? It's good and bad. Which one is it? Does this cancel that? And we suddenly, because we get overwhelmed by details, we start looking for shortcuts. And by the way, if you're trying to manage a lot of details and you're teaching yourself and I'm confused, you said it's good, you said it's doing this, but then it's also that. Which one is it? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? See, this is the type of thinking that comes into your mind because you don't understand the nuance and you don't understand how you don't have a system that allows you to organize all the complexity, because there is a lot of complexity. For example, you might say, well, Jupiter is a good one, right? Jupiter's one of the good planets, but Jupiter rules the 8th house. That's one of the bad ones. And it's in Leo in the 4th house. That's one of the good ones, but it's with Mars. That's a bad one. That's a bad planet. So which one is it? Is it good or bad, right? And because we don't know how to handle that nuance, which is actually very related to Mercury, just all those details, we wind up getting into judgments. Well, there's a good thing and a bad thing, so which one is it? I'm confused. It's not confusing. We deal with good and bad things, quote, all the time. Think of anything that you do really well. Anything. Anything that you do really well is subtle. There are things that are, again, the only reason we even call them good or bad is because we don't understand them. There is no good or bad in any of it. In fact, it's all good. But certain things are harsh or are cruel, and they make us, destroy something or get rid of something or have to protect ourselves against something. Like, for example, Mars. We have to protect and fight a little bit. Well, fighting's bad, right? No, it's not bad. If you want to be strong, you're going to have to fight against something. Fight against your own weakness. So we only get into these good and bad simplicities when we don't understand these things in greater detail, right? Just like everything else. Let's say something like cooking. And by the way, it's a good example because certain flavors are sweet. Others are sour. Others are bitter. Others are pungent. Some are hot. Some are soothing. Some are cool. Does that mean that the hot ones are bad? The sour ones are bad? No, sour is great. Tastes great. But too much sour, ugh. A nice mixture of sour and sweet and maybe a little bitter, maybe a little salty. Okay. Now we have a mixture of flavors. That's really the way to look at the astrological principles as well. You don't say, well, the salt is the good one. The sugar, the sugar's the good one. Salt is the bad one. The butter is the good one. The spinach is the bad one. No, put some spinach on butter. It's pretty good, right? Mixture. So when we don't understand this, and especially we're trying to organize all the details, we get overwhelmed. But again, applying a formulaic principle to all the indicators by matching up these important frameworks that were already mentioned before helps to organize what you're going to say. That way you're not just describing disconnected adjectives, but you're plugging them into a system. Meaning, when you describe a planet, you describe its nature, its element, and other frameworks like its guna, its caste. These are some of the frameworks that you would learn that you sort of pin on all of the chart reading statements that we're going to go over in the template. Same is true with zodiac signs. They are ruled by a planet. They have an internal or external nature. They're related to an element. They have a guna and more. Same is true with the astrology houses. They're related to one of the 4 motivations. They will be ruled by one of the planets. They will be connected to an evolutionary principle. So again, when we talk about this strategic growth, this SIC, right? This strategic improvement compounding, and we talk about 15 or 20 different principles, it starts with something like this. Do you think that you could get a 10 to 15% improvement on your understanding of the sun, of what the sun really is? Even just understanding Sankhya philosophy, that the sun is the self beyond your limited ego in this lifetime. It's the part of you that's trying to purify and burn through that so that you can connect with that which is transcendent. And the way you do that is through things that are bigger than just your limited identity. That includes things like stepping up in the world stage, your career, and getting outside your comfort zone so that you can get closer to that blazing self that is beyond. That's actually what the sun is. In the astrology chart, that's what the sun is trying to do. It's waking up that universal principle. Again, do you think if you really tried, and especially if you were led or guided by a certification course or something like that, where the whole thing is focused on expanding your knowledge and awareness of each of these principles? Again, the sun, the moon, your heart, your devotion, not just your emotions that get you triggered and confused, but what's pure devotion? Like in the yogic sense, in the sense of yoga and in the sense of, spirituality. Not just your emotions that get triggered, but your devotion that's beyond, like you have devotion to your child, devotion to your pets, where there's pure love. Understanding that. And by the way, one of the ways we understand those qualities of the planets is by their guna. The guna is the motivation, the deep motivating factor. They also have elements. Mars is one of the tamasic ones, I was saying, where we want to protect ourselves and have to do something harsh. Again, it's easy to say harsh, bad. Mars is bad because it's harsh. It's not harsh. You need to do things that are harsh. Like, for example, when you work out to make yourself strong, you're getting outside your comfort zone. That's a tamasic energy to make you strong, so that you have to resist and fight against getting weak. Otherwise, you're not strong, right? We all want to be strong. If I said you're weak, you'd be like, no, I'm not. Okay, well, what do you think's making you strong? Because Venus is the thing that's making you soft and happy, and the moon happy, loving. That's, on some level, that can also make you weak. You're just always wanting to make everybody happy, always so emotional. No, part of you's a badass. You're like, wait a second, I'm willing to fight for this thing. Like I'm willing to fight for my kids. I'm willing to fight for what's right. Well, again, but those fighting energies, we need to be careful. And we need to fight the good fight. So again, do you think you could increase your understanding of all these principles? Mercury, discrimination. What's actually true instead of all the stories you tell yourself? Even the stories you tell yourself about what you're learning in astrology or whatever. Is it real? Is it true? Is it really, is that really the right story? Oh yeah, it's all I'm learning, or I don't know, whatever you're telling yourself about it. Is it actually correct? Again, Mercury is that story. And what you're doing, Jupiter, what inspires you? Are you really moving toward what inspires you? Are you really putting it into practice? Do you think you have things to learn about pure inspiration, pure wisdom, pure teachings, guru, the source of wisdom? Do you have 10% room for growth? Venus, Saturn, and then each one of those gunas, body, mind, spirit, tamas, rajas, sattva. I mean, I learn more about these things every day, and I've been studying them for 20 years. The elements, huge things, the earth, being grounded, water, sensitivity, flowing, air, fire. The modalities of the signs, cardinal, fixed, dual. We're going to talk about that in the case study of Jada Pinkett and Will Smith. The caste, warrior, worker, merchant, teacher. And by the way, these are just a few. There's all kinds of other principles. For example, aspects. Big astrological principle. The aspects, the interactions, things like exact degrees. There's all kinds of things, angles, different types of houses. You've heard all kinds of things, perhaps if you've been gathering a lot of information. But increasing your understanding, even let's say, of the astrology houses themselves. Like, for example, I have this here. It says ascendant evolution of houses and the big PNS, the big priority and sequence. Again, we're going to get to that in this chart reading formula. But even just increasing your understanding of the houses and how the houses are not just one house, two house, three house. They're actually a framework. Again, you have these qualities of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, which are called the four Purusharthas. Dharma, which is the truth. This is the truth of yourself, and your true identity is the first house. Your true nature and interactions with others is shown through the fifth house. Your true relationship with the cosmos and higher teachings and wisdom is shown by the ninth house. They're all houses of Dharma. Did you know that? Do you understand that? Even if you understand that, oh, okay, I've heard that. But do you know how to explain it? Do you really get it? Do you know how the first house becomes the second house? How your truthful identity is shown in your values and your money, and who you really are is also an extension of the people around you. Again, this is all the self part of your evolution. Houses 1, 2, 3, 4 is how Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha evolves personally. There's your true identity. There are the values that come as a result. There are the interests that are always testing and expanding your current value set. And then there's the moksha, to want to be liberated, free of it all, and to take refuge in yourself and in your home and in your heart. And then it picks up, and then Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha happens in the realm of others. Right? Did you know this structure? You're just hearing it now, even if you're like, oh yeah, I've heard you say that. Okay, but do you know it? Can you explain it? Do you have room to understand more? Imagine if you understood each one of these houses 10 to 20% more. Like, oh, I totally understand how the first and seventh house are a mirror reflection of each other. The second and the eighth house. Oh yeah, the second house of security, money, values, and the eighth house of insecurity, loss of control, vulnerability. Oh, these oppositions. Oh, I get that. Now I understand how the ninth house of my higher meaning and teachers and my beliefs are opposite the third house, which are the things that I can figure out for myself. Okay, they're opposite each other. The third house are the things that I figured out, and the ninth house are the things I must believe in. Oh, okay, I get that. So again, so much room for improvement, and these are the things that once you start to plug in, this is that strategic improvement compounding. You start to improve the right things in the right order, so that then when you start to read a chart, all of this improvement compounding is now being leveraged. It's not just, oh yeah, I learned some stuff here. Okay, it's great to learn new stuff. But what good is it if it's not part of something, if it's not leveraged? Everything's about leverage. In business, in your life, again, think of anything. Let's say you're trying to lose weight. Let's say you learn part of, trying to lose weight is a big thing. It's not just eat less food or work out more or this or that. Your body's very subtle. Sometimes you have food intolerances. There's all kinds of things going on, right? You can learn one part of it and do one part, but then that's not the whole thing. You have to leverage that, let's say, that sort of state of ketosis or something that you're learning about, being insulin resistant or some kind of thing. You have to do it at the right time. You have to learn when to eat, what foods to eat, how to work out, how to prime your body for burning fat all day or whatever it might be. It's not just, and anybody who's tried to lose weight, you lose a little, then you gain more back and whatnot, because it's not strategic. This is why. There's definitely a way to do it. And if you've ever done it, you know there was a specific strategy at some point that worked. I use that as an example, but there's infinite examples. So, of course, reading astrology charts is the same way. So there's a formula that you can use, and I'll just go over that here now. So let's do a little foreshadowing, because I know that we're going to do Will Smith's chart, and I know his is a Taurus. So if I were to do his chart, I would say your ascendant is Taurus. It is the feminine nature of Venus, making you a representative of Venus expressing its feminine, emotional, internal side. Your ruling planet, Venus, is the indicator of beauty, joy, happiness, where we find happiness in life. And it's better that we find happiness for no reason, that we find happiness in those transcendent qualities of life. By the way, I said this in the last video because Venus, the exaltation point of Venus is Pisces. So your ruling planet is the indicator of happiness and where we find it. And in its highest sense, we find happiness for no reason, because happiness and bliss and joy is our nature. And that's the highest vibration. You're really looking for bliss and joy and happiness, and you can get stuck in the possessive quality where you find fault with things. But underneath it all, you're really looking not only to find what's beautiful and what makes you happy, but then you want to gather it in and hold on to it, because your sign of Taurus is also an earth sign, and it's a fixed earth sign. So the earth is about tangible stuff. It has to do with, with the home, with those things that are, again, tangible, practical. And it's a fixed sign, which means, again, it's also not so willing to change. The things you have, you want to hold on to them, and you want to go deeply into them and expand them. Now, again, you'll have a strong motivation toward what's called rajas, or enjoyment and pleasure. So you're one of those big, you're very much a sort of bliss bunny. You want to find the things you love, the people you love, the things that make you happy, the things that you think are beautiful, and keep accumulating them and keep building them and hang on to them for a long time, because of that fixed nature of your ascendant as well. Because that fixed nature is where you want to just concentrate and stay with it. The fixed nature can also make you a little bit stubborn and a little bit resistant to change. Now, you'll have a strong purpose driven toward working hard worker, what's called a Shudra, which means that you want to work hard and you're willing to work hard to accomplish those things, as long as you know that there's joy and bliss at the end. But you need to be careful to not just keep working to accumulate stuff. That can be, you can get sort of buried in a mountain of stuff if you're not careful. Okay, stop. That's just me describing the nature of Taurus. Any Taurus person listening to this, I didn't say anything about where the planet was in the chart, anything. This is just me describing the sign. All of that was just me describing the sign of Taurus. I first described the nature of the planet. Then I described its internal or external. Then I described the element. I described the guna. And I brought those things together, right? So again, That was just me describing Taurus. I didn't say anything about anything else. Very detailed. And by the way, it was quite abbreviated. I'm just kind of hitting a few of those things in a sentence or two about each one of those things. But you could see how comprehensive that is. I could say a lot about it. And that had nothing to do even with any planets and any signs anywhere. It's just the nature of Taurus, right? Now, Will Smith, I know, doesn't have any planets in the first house. So we'll skip down to the next part and we can see his chart. So when we go into his, then the next thing that we go to is where the ruling planet is, and then we start getting into the house and the sign, and we start bringing in the houses and the signs. So after we explain that it's Taurus, we could see in his chart, he's got Venus, his ruling planet Venus is down here in Libra. It's with Venus and the moon, and it's in the 6th house. So these are the things that we go into next. And as you see here, again, he doesn't have any planets in the first house, but it says your ruling planet is in the 6th house and in the sign of Libra. This shows you'll place a lot of importance on those 6th house qualities, on hard work, service, sacrifice. You're really willing to work hard for those things that you want to accomplish. But along the way, you can get into battles and struggles with people as well, and you have to learn to be of service to those things and make sure that you're surrounded by the things that you love. Then you'll just be in service to the things you love. But you'll do them in a very Libra-like way, which means you'll be in a very friendly way, in a very diplomatic way, because that 6th house is the sign of Libra. And again, Libra is also ruled by your ruling planet Venus. And so again, I just brought together the ruling planet goes into the 6th house, it's in Libra, and you explain those qualities of how this person will try to live their Taurus nature. He's going to do it in a very hardworking way, right? But also in a very diplomatic way, likes people, you'll like people, you'll enjoy the hard work as long as it's with people that you enjoy and blah, blah, this kind of stuff, right? Very simple. All I've talked about is Taurus, and his ruling planet Venus is in the 6th house in Libra, right? Now we say if it's joined another planet, aspected by another planet, then you go. And his is joined 2 planets and aspected by Saturn, pretty wide aspect, but it's there. So if joined another planet, you would say your ruling planet is joined by both Mercury and the moon. So then it says identify the planet, its nature as a karaka, and the houses that it rules. Then I just go through that with these planets. So your ruling planet is joined or aspected by Mercury and the moon. So its association with Mercury brings it into a relationship with one of the best friends of your ruling planet, because Mercury is a very helpful planet. It rules the 2nd house of your values and your speech and your family, and also the 5th house of creativity. This is why you love being creative, and you'll work very hard for those things that you want to create, because this is the 5th house ruler of creativity in the 6th house of hard work with your ruling planet, and it's also the 5th house ruler of making money. So you're very geared towards, finding those things that you love, that you want to create, making them very profitable, sharing that profit with your family. 2nd house, so you'll be a great provider and want to really work hard for those things. It's also joined the moon. And again, the moon now is it's the planet of feelings and emotions and the heart. And again, also a very strong connection to family. And the moon also rules your 3rd house, which is about trying new things, having a lot of interest. So you might be doing a lot of things. You might have a lot of creative interest. And as we know about Will Smith, music, film, other kinds of stuff. But you need to be careful not to get too scattered and get too sideways with things. But you'll like doing things with media, with writing, with communication, because both Mercury is about communication, also the 3rd house ruler. And again, there's a real theme of hard work and service, especially if you know that it's going towards something higher. You'll work hard for it, and it'll feel like it's worth it, like all that effort and hard work is worth it. And again, because it's in the sign of Libra, you'll be very good with people in that environment. You'll be well liked, but you'll also want to be appreciated. And at times when you're not appreciated, often you'll feel unappreciated, by the way. So this is something that you need to watch out for, is feeling unappreciated at times, because that moon is there, third house ruler, again in the sixth house. Often we feel like we're unappreciated in that type of environment. So we'll cut right there. So again, this is just a few things. Again, and this is nothing that everything I just said, maybe you couldn't do it off the top of your head because you don't know it off the top of your head. But these things I just said are like the most important things that you would ever say to Will Smith, because this is going to be the foundation of pretty much everything, right? We get into specific predictions and whatnot, but I'm talking about just all of these frameworks and organizing them in a sensible way. Now, again, all this is at the top of my head because I've done it a lot, and also because I have a lot of depth of knowledge of how to bring these things out. I know that I'm looking for a confluence of things, like Mercury is about communication, and the moon as a third house ruler is also about communication, especially things like media and singing and being creative. And again, but that just comes through experience, but also by learning what each of these things are. Again, even when I go up here with these houses, look at the things I said. I talked about the second house ruler, the fifth house ruler, planets are in the sixth house, and also the moon rules the third house. You can see I brought all those things together with the nature of the planet and with the ascendant. So again, this is just like a winning formula as far as going through and being able to just at least start with getting a nice profile. In the next video, I'm going to actually bring up their timing of these two and show how recent events are shown and even predicted as I record this in early May of 2022. Things like slapping and maybe divorcing and things like that. Again, Jada Pinkett's chart, I also thought to include hers because she also has planets in the first house. So we would go through the same exercise here with hers is Scorpio, it's the moon and whatnot. But because, again, Will Smith didn't have any planets in the first house, we could do the same exercise. But with her ruling planet, again, it's Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars. And it's a Tamasic sign, which is about protection. It's watery, which is about emotion. It's also a fixed sign, which is about stubbornness. So these are two stubborn people. The fixed signs have a stubbornness and a concentration. So they're in it for a long time, but they can also get sort of stuck. But you have earth and water. They're both feminine, reflective, emotional. But then she also has Jupiter in the first house. So when you get a planet, let's say, in the first house, then you would also say, then you would go into that planet in the first house. So again, we had this, if there's a planet in the first house, Jupiter is in your first house, showing that things such as being inspired and finding higher meaning and purpose, and that may include sort of false prophets at times, or things that you're looking to be inspired and you're looking to be led, and sometimes it's a bit of a rocky path, but that'll be an important theme in your life. What's the meaning? What's the point? What's the higher purpose of this thing? One of the things that Jupiter brings is children, because children also give us a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. When we have the child, suddenly our point and our meaning and purpose is very clear. After the children grow up, maybe you're trying to find it again because now your purpose is no longer so clear. Now what is my purpose, right? For example. So Jupiter, this planet in the first house, has a strong motivation toward sattva, or goodness, or higher consciousness and teaching. And it's very strong and compatible with that ascendant, because Jupiter and Mars are very friendly toward each other. It's the fifth house ruler and the second house ruler, which is also about wealth and money and value and speech. So it's very important for you to also have your own values, not just the ones of your partner or what have you, and to bring those teachings and to express those teachings and speak them, because Jupiter rules your second house and your fifth house. And this planet activates the energy of water and fire. So it's a very dynamic planet. And it's also a masculine planet. So it's very motivated. So this Jupiter in your first house gives you a lot of creative motivations. This is why you were an actor when you were younger. You also even played in a band. You're very interested in music and all kinds of creative endeavors of your own right, because you have Jupiter, the 5th and 2nd house ruler, in the first house, trying to inspire you to express yourself and express your values. So again, that's the way you would handle that planet in the first house. So again, this is a very simple reading template. And again, you can see I just have things like element, gender, guna, caste, because these are the things you say. And again, it's all of these frameworks. Astrology is built on these frameworks, Vedic astrology, because it's built on the frameworks of Sankhya philosophy. All of these signs, and again, I just talked about a few of them here. There's numerous things. These are the things that you say, and you look for a confluence where these things are joined. Like, for example, Jupiter is about teaching and inspiration, and it rules the 5th house, which is also about teaching and inspiration. So it's going to double that. It's going to magnify that. It's also about children. Again, Jupiter is the indicator of children, but for Scorpio, it definitely and doubly, because it also rules the 5th house of children. So you're going to see she's going to have children. They're going to be her inspirations, and then once the children don't need her, once her sense of purpose is no longer connected to children, or they can be part of it or something, she's going to always be looking for what's the higher meaning, what's the higher purpose. By the way, relationships are not dharmic. They're not about what inspires us. They're actually where we learn they're about kama, they're about desire. They're not about dharma, which is a deeper level, but it's not that hard to understand. So again, these are the things, this strategic improvement compounding, SIC. I had to put this acronym together to really encapsulate this. Look, I've said for years to advanced students, and I put that in quotations because I'm constantly hearing, again, most of what I get inundated with are people who frankly think they know more than they do. I don't mean that to be insulting. Again, they know things, they've gathered data, but they really don't. It's almost an obstacle. I'll tell you, almost without a doubt, the best students that I've had are the ones that really didn't think they knew anything at first, and they were just a sponge and took it all in, because there wasn't all this clutter that they had to deal with. Or, I'm confused, I thought this was that. What? And again, most people think they know a lot more than they do. But even if you do know things, advanced students, for those who have been gathering data for years, it's actually fine. But they still can't read a chart correctly. You don't need to gather more data. You just need to comprehend and deepen your existing knowledge. Again, many people listen to this, they're like, oh, I know what Scorpio is, and Libra, and Leo, and Mars. I'm not saying you don't know what it is, but to just understand and have a bunch of adjectives about it, but not know how to use it strategically, is almost just creating an illusion of understanding. So again, you might think, great, this is what I'm doing. I'm watching videos and really starting to get it. Okay, well, that's good that you're starting to get it and that you're interested again, but you need to also be strategic about what you're taking in. You need to apply the priority and sequence principle like we just did. So when you focus on the most important things and you improve those things and you spend your time doing that, your progress is very fast. So again, I showed in the last video how businesses optimize the important leverage points in like a sales process to 3 to 5x the results. And again, businesses do this because they're going to go out of business if they don't. We can really learn a lot about business and how to be professional. By the way, there's some of us who are professional astrologers, and at some point being successful, you have to get real and be professional about it and not just sort of flail around. So again, this is how businesses succeed, but the same principle applies to astrology or anything else. If you just learn deeply and or improve, like I say, 10 to 15 things, you can do astrology very well. Help people know yourself better and maybe even make a career out of it. So ask yourself, do you have room for growth? Do you think you have 10% of growth or learning to make relative to each of the planets? Like you have 10% of growth that you can learn about the 9 planets? How about the signs? 12 of them. Do you have 10% of growth about each sign? Like, do you really understand the cast of the sign, the guna, the element. Do you have 10% of growth that you could learn? How about the houses? Do you really understand the houses so well that nothing you can learn? There's not 10% learning. Aspects, transits. Or what about just learning how to organize it better? You think 10% better organization? I mean, I just went through a quick template here, but do you think like 10% growth on that, and especially an immersion where you're in a, let's say, in a community of people that get together and like help you learn it, do you think that would help you? And so just imagine what your understanding of astrology would be with just these simple tweaks. And frankly, how much would you pay for such an exponential astrological or personal growth? More importantly, how much could you earn from such an exponential improvement? I don't often talk about that people can make a living at it, but many have, and got their money back 10 times in readings. So look, I guarantee you'll improve your knowledge of each planet, sign, and house in my certification course. In fact, I do guarantee the course. That's how confident I am in it. You can register for it now. It's probably still open if you're watching this. But again, you can click more about what's holding you back and what to do about it. This is the page. If you did, and I do have, go over some of these problems that you have and how to get back on track. Again, when you go to this page as well, you can also look at the system. It's called the P5 system and how it works, purpose, principles, principle stacking, priority and sequence, and practice with peers. These are the 5 pillars that I've been doing forever in my course. And then you can look at the program as well right here. You can see how it's laid out. Just enormous, classes, so much that you get. You can register down here for it. So much value that you get. And also make sure to check out testimonials. I got so many testimonials for these courses. It's amazing. I put some of them on here, but it's like, I could have 50 more. I mean, there's hundreds of testimonials that I've got for the course. So again, if you're interested, you should do that. But also stay tuned, because in a couple days I'm going to bring another template and show you the timing, dashas, transits, nakshatras, and other complexities that you need to know. I'm going to talk about the Will and Jada charts with some of the recent predictions that I made and some of the things that have recently happened. But until then, consider a few things. Everything you can do well in your life, you owe to a system. And that system is built on this principle of priority and sequence. Everything you can do well. Cooking. I use that as an example. Making a meal, making an omelet. That's one example. I usually do things in the right order. Anything that you can do well. You start somewhere, you do something. So you must do the right thing at the right time in the proper measure also, or you will fail. It's also not just doing, I know what to do, but you do it in a proper measure. You make an omelet. Do you have like 10 pounds of parsley? No, you have to do the right amount of it also. It's not just the right order, right? So everything has to be done correctly. As I said, all you need to do is learn 10 to 15 things deeply, maybe a little more, but basically the principles start to compound after a while. I say 10 to 15 things deeply, then do them in the right order, and all the confusion you have about astrology and maybe yourself will disappear. Be strategic. Leverage your time. Do you have room to improve about 10% in these areas of astrology and life? Like I said, 10% improvement? What would it mean to you if you understood yourself in astrology with a 3 to 5x improvement? What would you pay for that knowledge? And again, and that's what the compounding does. Even 10 to 15 to 20 improvements of about 10% winds up being 3 to 5x improvement. So that means instead of making like $40, you make $200 dollars. It's that drastic from a business point of view. Imagine the same with your astrology knowledge. So again, if this interests you, register for the certification course if you still can. Look it over. Again, you can learn and are meant to know Vedic astrology. As it says, years ago, I realized that Vedic astrology was being massively overcomplicated in the way it was being taught. This is mainly because teachers didn't have a system in place. I'm not trying to be mean. They're fine teachers, but we all have our strength. This is mine, is to systematize it and be able to teach anyone. But what happened is instead it was thought that people need to be gifted in order to understand and practice astrology. But again, that's not really the case. Vedic astrology is like any other subject that you can learn if you go to college and want to learn it. At least I know it is for people who study with me, because I've broken it down to these levels first. Then the complexity is added on top, and by now I have hundreds and hundreds of success stories and graduates. So you could be among them. And stay tuned for the next video, though, where you'll see things broken down in a more granular level, so that we're not only just looking at character qualities and traits, but we're also looking at timing, the events of timing, aspects, yogas, harmonic charts, nakshatras, and other intricacies. So I hope this was helpful for you to hear.